Good morning and welcome back to our news bulletin. I'm Saria Strzemska. EU ministers responsible for cohesion policy and other related matters are meeting today in Warsaw as part of Poland's presidency of the Council of the EU. They will discuss whether the EU should enhance support for underserved regions to promote equality or concentrate instead on increasing investment in its most developed areas. Our reporter Piotr Miszczuk is on site. Good morning, Piotr. Good to see you. So, what meaningful decisions are expected after this meeting?
Hi, Sally. So, as you have mentioned, it's an informal meeting, so no binding decisions are expected. There will be a joint declaration, and that's all that we can count on. I spoke to several delegates, and they told me that they want to send a strong message that the cohesion policy, so basically leaving no one behind, no region behind, is crucial. Opening the event was Polish Minister for Development Funds and Regional Policy, Katarzyna Pełczyńska-Nałęcz, and she said that it's a crucial moment for Europe. As we have already said, this is a key moment between, bringing back everyone to the same level or trying to be more competitive. Cohesion policy is the most important fund of the European Union. This in the current budget from 2021 to 2027, it is almost 400 billion euros. But there are several challenges attached to it. One of the challenges is the spending that we are currently as the European Union earmarking for defense. Also the common agricultural policy, especially given that soon the cheap imports from Ukraine will not be possible. That is going to come into force on the 5th of June. And Poland is a big proponent of this cohesion policy. And why cohesion policy is important? Several delegates told me that cohesion policy is the most important measure to help fight the rising tide of nationalism and populism. This is the cohesion policy, which Poland has been a big beneficiary of, is why we have our democracies working. So this is a pivotal moment for the whole bloc, which will decide the future, because those discussions will revolve around the next budget after 2027. So we'll see in the coming hours what the statement will say and what measures the ministers and all the delegates, there are 36 delegations here, what they will say. Back to you, Sally.
Piotr Miszczuk, much appreciated. Meanwhile, European Union diplomacy chief Kaja Kallas is beginning her three-day visit to the Western Balkans. Brussels supports the process of gradual integration of these countries with the EU, with the intention of eventually welcoming them to the bloc. There are 5 EU candidate countries in the Western Balkans, and the region is one of the main directions of potential EU expansion. The European Union aims to promote peace and stability in the Western Balkans and to support the candidate countries in fulfilling the requirements needed to join the bloc. Protests continue in Serbia after a court in Novi Sad ruled that 3 of the 6 activists arrested for allegedly planning a coup d'etat should be placed under house arrest. The protests have been ongoing since late last year, following a tragic roof collapse at a railway station in Novi Sad that killed 16 people. Students and members of the public gathered in the main squares of Serbian cities said that despite the decision, they will continue to protest until everyone is released from prison. The Higher Public Prosecutor's Office in Novi Sad filed an indictment against 12 people, accusing them of preparing an attack on Serbia's constitutional order. 6 have been arrested, while the other 6 were abroad. The arrests were made 2 nights before a major rally in Belgrade on May 15th, after pro-government TV stations aired audio recordings of people talking about entering the building of the Serbian public broadcaster. The recording was allegedly made during a meeting of the Novi Sad branch of the Movement of Free Citizens. The court's order to move the three activists to house arrest prompted a comment from Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić. In a live TV interview, Vučić claimed that no other country would release those charged with undermining the constitutional order so quickly. Additionally, the Serbian president went on to call the activists charged with organizing the alleged coup d'etat, quote, terrorists. The Polish parliament has approved the extension of a temporary restriction on asylum applications at the Belarusian border. A total of 366 lawmakers voted in favor of the extension, with 17 voting against. No one abstained. Addressing the issue the day before, Prime Minister Donald Tusk emphasized the importance of asylum rights, but argued that the current situation warranted the suspension. He pointed out that the right to asylum was being exploited by Russia, Belarus smugglers and criminals who are turning migration into a mass illegal movement that he described as a form of aggression against Poland. The initial ruling, which suspended the right to asylum for 60 days, came into effect on March 27th. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that he anticipates Russia will offer proposals for a ceasefire in Ukraine in the coming days. He noted that these proposals presented by Moscow will enable the U.S. to evaluate if the Russia's intentions are genuine.
So what we're expecting now, based on the president's phone conversation yesterday and my conversations over the weekend with Mr. Lavrov, is that at some point here fairly soon, maybe in a number of days, maybe this week hopefully, the Russian side is going to present terms that they would want to see, just broad terms that would allow us to move towards a ceasefire. And that ceasefire would then allow us to enter into detailed negotiations to bring about an end to the conflict. We are hoping that will happen. We believe that the term sheet that the Russians produce will tell us a lot about their true intentions. If it's a term sheet that's realistic and you can work off of it.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says that it is vital that the United States remain involved in the peace process because Russia fears America. Zelensky made the comments in his Tuesday night address after speaking with several European leaders.
Ми не закінчуємо, нам потрібні спільні.
We need unified positions and even greater coordination. Diplomacy is stronger when we are united. We are discussing with our partners the ideas and outcomes of yesterday's conversation with US President Trump. It is crucial that America remains involved in the peace process. It is precisely the United States that Russia fears. American influence can save many lives if it is used to pressure Putin into ending the war.
Now an update from Ukraine. 6 Ukrainian soldiers lost their lives and 10 others were wounded in a Russian drone strike that targeted a military training area on Tuesday. In a statement, Ukraine's National Guard said an official investigation into the incident is underway. The commander of the unit has been suspended and the necessary reports have been passed to law enforcement agencies, the statement added. In response to airstrike threats, the National Guard Command said it had established protocols and issued the necessary directives. Vladimir Putin is playing a game of cat and mouse with Donald Trump, said Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski in Brussels. Sikorski expressed hope that Trump will eventually recognize that Putin is only stalling for time. This, he believes, will create an opportunity for the U.S. to implement new sanctions on Russia, what Trump's ally, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, has been advocating for.
I, for one, believe that if President Trump finally recognizes that Vladimir Putin is playing cat and mouse with him, playing for time, rather than realistically implementing a ceasefire, it is possible to launch Senator Lindsey Graham's package, a very tough one. And if that were to happen, we, as the European Union, should be no worse off. On the other hand, Ukraine is still fighting, Ukraine has European support and still has American support, and in the background there is a package of very hard sanctions signed by almost 80 senators, that is the constitutional majority and the majority of the Republican club in the Senate.
Pope Leo XIV expressed his willingness to host the next round of peace talks between Ukraine, Russia, the US and the EU. The news was announced by Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni.
The news was announced by Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. A statement released by Meloni's office says Donald Trump and other European leaders asked her to verify the readiness of the Holy See to host negotiations. Before the statement was released, Volodymyr Zelensky said that his administration is exploring possibilities of negotiations in Turkey, Switzerland, or the Vatican. The news comes after Pope Leo XIV, in his first Sunday address, called for peace in Ukraine, adding he carries in his heart the suffering of our beloved people of Ukraine.
17th package of sanctions against Russia has just been approved. However, this is not all. Multiple countries, including Lithuania, have called on the EU to implement even tougher sanctions on Russia in the upcoming 18th sanctions package.
According to the Lithuanian Foreign Ministry, the EU must impose harsher restrictions on Russia as the Kremlin continues to reject the 30-day ceasefire proposal. In the opinion of the ministry, the next sanctions package should target Russian energy, liquid natural gas, oil, and nuclear fuel exports, as well as financial institutions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made similar calls, saying that the EU should apply additional sanctions on, quote, Russian oil, the tanker fleet, all their energy infrastructure that finances the war, all their banks, or financial schemes, and Russia's military industry. He also announced that the 18th sanctions package is already being prepared.
The Trump administration's funding cuts have adversely affected many organizations, in some cases leading the EU to respond. In its latest initiative, the bloc is set to sign a contract valued at €5.5 million with Radio Free Europe to provide emergency funding and support to this media outlet.
The funding was announced on Tuesday by the EU's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas. The deal will provide short-term emergency funding designed to safeguard independent journalism. The announcement came in response to the funding cuts imposed by the Trump administration. Radio Free Europe, established during the Cold War to challenge Soviet influence on the continent, operates as an independent media outlet funded by the U.S. congressional appropriations through the U.S. Agency for Global Media. The outlet drew Kremlin's ire as it provides critical coverage of authoritarian regimes, their human rights abuses, and Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine.
And now time for some sports news. Bilbao is set to experience one of the largest football events of the year, the final of UEFA Europe League. This year's final in Spain will see two English teams, Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United, battle it out for the €13 million prize and a spot in the next year edition of the Champions League.
The match will mark the last opportunity for each of the clubs to end a session with a trophy and suit their fans. Both teams looked poor this year. Manchester United entered the league campaign in 16th place, while Tottenham took the 17th spot in the league table. Winning the match will also mark Tottenham's first European trophy since 1984 and the first trophy of any kind since they won the English League Cup in 2008. On the other hand, Manchester United supporters are eager to return to the club's glory days. Finishing 16th in the Premier League while trained by Ruben Amorim is a far cry from the 13 league titles won under the guidance of the legendary manager Sir Alex Ferguson.
And with this, we conclude this news bulletin. World Talks with Ashim Kumar coming up next.